Hey, welcome back to Mocktails with Marina. I'm your host, Marina, and today we're diving into a series that started on Instagram and immediately struck a chord. Wolves in the non-alcoholic industry. Now let me explain what I mean by wolves, because wolves are not competitors, they're not people who disagree with you, they're not businesses that happen to do things differently. Wolf is someone who looks like part of the flock. They talk community, they talk wellness, they talk about building culture, but underneath, they're taking advantage. They're manipulating, they're feeding off the movement instead of feeding into it. One of my favorite quotes, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves." And when I look around at the non-alc industry, I see wolves in every corner. If we don't learn to recognize them, we cannot protect everything that we're building. So today I'm going to walk you through the first 11 wolves that I've called out in this series, and let me say this up front, this is just the beginning. So if you want to follow along as I add more beyond what you're going to hear in this episode, please head over to Instagram at Mocktails with Marina. That's where I'm sharing the bite-sized reels, where each individual idea will be shared. So on this podcast, we're going to unpack the first 11 in depth. Wolf number 1, late paychecks and owners' draws. So let's start with the most relatable wolf. Owners who take their own draw, their own paycheck basically, while the paychecks for staff or other collaborators, other contributors, vendors, whoever it is, come in late. This is the fastest way to destroy trust. Your bartenders, kava tenders, cashiers, whoever your team is made up of, they're likely living paycheck to paycheck. So they can't pay rent with an IOU. If you're cashing out for yourself before paying them, you are not a leader, you are a thief. And the thing is, once staff see that happen, they're never going to believe you again when you talk about community or loyalty. The wolf mask just completely slips off. And worse, because a lot of these community members love your staff, they are also going to catch wind. They may not want to hang out. They may not want to give you money anymore. This, quite frankly, not only is terrible wolf behavior, but also it's terrible self-sabotage. And every idea I'm going to share with you is self-sabotage, because if you're not taking care of your people, you're not going to be able to take care of your business. And before I move forward, I also want to mention that some of these wolf behaviors are things that people do and they don't realize that it's bad. For example, if you're well, I need to take my owner's draw first because I need to feed my grandma. I don't know. Or you have that whole stealing a loaf of bread kind of philosophical dilemma comes up here, right? And a lot of wolves, they don't start out as these villainous creatures that we see in the movies. They start out just like you and me. And then they get a little burnt out. And they start to feel a little bit scarce. And they start to cut corners. And all of these wolf examples are cutting corners in some way, shape, or form. It isn't easy to operate business ethically and morally, especially if you want to make a lot of money. But if you're listening here and you catch my vibe, you are one of those people that, probably can't sleep at night if you were to do something to hurt people. So if any of this kind of triggers you in any way, just know, I'm not going to sit here and try to cancel your business. That's garbage. I'm here to show you what this wolf behavior is so that you can do something about it in yourself, do something about it in your community, choose not to frequent businesses that treat people like garbage, There's so many tools from this. So I want this to be a learning opportunity. I'm not going to be naming businesses here. But I will say that, it's very important to study these things. So all of that being said, let's move into wolf number 2, exploiting labor with family language. This is when people say things like, "We're family here," which can sometimes be genuine, and that's not the wolfish thing, but more often than not, it is a manipulation tactic. It tends to be code for, "We expect you to sacrifice, take on extra, and not complain, because we're family." But family should not weaponize loyalty. Family shouldn't make you feel guilty for asking to be paid fairly. And when owners use family language to justify labor abuse, they're definitely in a controlling kind of mood, right? They're not here to try to build community. This brings us to wolf number 3, which is non-compete clauses. So basically, this is when a bar or brand tells their staff, like, you can work here, but if you ever leave, you can't take your skills to another bar or launch something of your own. First off, in some states, this is actually totally illegal. So if they put this in their contract, the entire contract kind of becomes null and void unless there is a specific clause that says otherwise. But I've seen this fall apart more often than not. Usually it's just an empty threat. I have, though, seen and experienced in a totally different industry where when I was a dance instructor and I left a studio that I was at, and I had a very high retention rate. The studio ended up losing thousands of dollars when I left. And when that happened, instead of reaching out and trying to come up with any sort of bridge, which is what I wanted at the time, but that wasn't an option that they wanted to make available. So, I just started working at another studio, and then that owner tried to send a cease and desist letter to the new studio owner that I was at. And luckily, that girl is a real homie. She had my back and was like, this is dumb. Like, you can't come in here and tell me how to run my business, because especially in the state of Wisconsin, it definitely doesn't hold up for independent contractors. So it's very important to understand. And by the way, I'm not a lawyer. That was just me telling you my story. But all of this is to say, like, why do I think non-compete clauses are wolfish? It's because it's not about like protecting workplace culture or anything. Like, it's fear. It's a control tactic, once again, that doesn't like make logical sense, because real leaders create environments where people want to stay, not where they're forced to stay. Like, that's weird, right? And when someone outgrows you, the right response is to cheer them on, not chain them down. One other example I want to give, I'm in Arizona and I worked at the first kava bar, and that opened back in like 2019. And, it's 2025 as of the recording of this. There are over 20 kava bars in Arizona, which is so cool. And no one's shutting down. Like, no one's having the issue. If businesses are having issues in Arizona, it's because there's something that they are missing on delivery. There's something they're missing on management, marketing, whatever it is. But the people are there and they're definitely coming. So point of this story is non-compete clauses are garbage. They stunt community and industry growth. And if you feel like you need to control people, I would recommend that you work a little bit more on your leadership skills so that people are so inspired that it's not even a choice. They're just with you. They're ride or dies. Now, wolf topic number 4, we're going to move a little bit more into like the actual ingredients and servings of themselves. And again, starting with sloppy serving practices, one sloppy serve can ruin an entire county. And I mean that literally. When a bar serves kava that's too weak, or kratom that's too strong, or old, or mushrooms that are gritty or inconsistent, that customer doesn't just write off your bar. They often are going to judge the entire category and now feel weary about ever going back. That sloppy serve becomes the story that they tell their friends, the review they leave online, and the reason that they never try again. And suddenly every other bar or brand in your area is fighting against the shadow of your mistakes, sometimes with the health department, government agencies, and that's just garbage. Wolves they don't care who else they take down with them. And that's what you have to remember. Like, there's no such thing as loyalty with these people. And going into wolf topic number 5, like, beyond just selling bad product, of course they don't want to educate people on how to properly consume or share these products, because then they'd be caught in their sloppy serving tactics. So that's one side of this. But also in general, like, let's talk about educating people, right? If your bar, bottle shop, or brand just sells without teaching, you're simply moving product, right? Customers who don't know what they're drinking are confused. They don't know how it works, what to expect, why it matters, probably going to have a bad experience. And then those confused people don't return. They don't understand what the value, what the hype of it all was about. Wolves thrive on dependency because if you don't know better, you have to trust them blindly. And once again, that is controlling. Once again, what does this all always come down to? It's about control and CEOs, owners, operators who don't understand where you're supposed to put tension and where you're supposed to release tension or release responsibility to other people. Now, that being said, wolf number 6 sells expired product. And this one makes my blood boil because this is snake oil, right? If someone is selling oxidized kratom, stale kava, dead adaptogens, they are being lazy and they're putting their customers at risk. And the fallout is huge. Customers will get sick, lose trust. Regulators see another excuse to call our entire industry shady. And the lawsuits, they're coming. Wolves don't think long term. They care about cash today, even if it destroys the ecosystem tomorrow. So, again, just make sure you're labeling everything if you don't want to be this wolf. You're checking everything. You have standard operating procedures that ensures that you are FIFOing first out. You are doing everything you can to ensure that that product is as fresh as possible. And you have policies when you have expired product. What do? Do you dump it down? Who's allowed to take it? Like, what's the deal? And maybe that depends on what the product is. Maybe some things genuinely are okay after expiration. It's just expiration because of the fact that it's bottled, but maybe some things last longer than others, especially if they're in the fridge, right? So these are all things you need to make sure that you are very clear on, and don't just like willy-nilly post-it note rumor these types of pieces of information. You want to make sure you have a centralized database of information that any employee can pull from at any time, right? So beyond just an employee manual, this has how to do all of these things, how to ensure you're not selling expired product, how to educate, how to ensure that you're not having sloppy serving practices. These are all things that very easily can be solved by an SOP, which, side note, I have so many templates. All this being said, let's move into wolf number 7, fake functional brands. Some wolves are going to be wearing this like outfit, this wellness clothing outfit where they plaster words like functional and adaptogenic on labels, but inside the cans there are endocrine disruptors, fake sweeteners, chemical additives, you name it. Now, I'm not saying that you have to not have vices in life. I love a good fake sweetener sometimes. There are some things, okay, that I'm not saying that they're like inconsumable. I'm just saying that's not wellness. Like, that's not how one should advertise. Like, that's marketing spin. People choose non-alc because they want better options for their bodies and their minds. So if you betray their trust by selling them chemicals in disguise, you're poisoning that tree. You're poisoning the movement that comes from that. Now, again, not everybody, like some people are like, yo, I'm not drinking alcohol. That's good enough. I don't care what else is in this. Let's go. And that's cool. But the thing is, those are actively advertised as alcohol analogs, right? Or non-alcoholic cocktails, not wellness drinks, right? We're not biohacking here. If you're not biohacking, you're not, like there's a difference between selling an actual functional brand and then selling a non-alcoholic cocktail or whatever it might be. Like, these words matter. They're not just buzzwords. And if you are confused on all these words and what the differences are and you think they're all the same thing, please dive into one of my communities and learn how this is so much more complex than that. And if you're just enjoying this industry as a whole, like, cool, like, enjoy your journey of learning. But if you're trying to open a business, don't be a wolf about it. Now, that being said, let's talk about the next wolf, which is lying about labs and serving sizes. So this is still very, very related to this fake functional brand, right? Because let's say you have a can and it says, hey, there's 40 milligrams of caffeine in this. That matters a lot if you are sensitive, if you are pregnant, if you are on any sort of heart medications, right? It's like, you have to be aware of what you're putting in your body. And if it says 40 milligrams, but then there's 80 milligrams in there, we might have a problem. Every American has the right to know what's in their glass. So when a brand lies about serving sizes, maybe they're labeling 10 servings when it's really 5, or they panic when their product gets sent to a third-party lab, That's wolf behavior. Because side note, if you ever are like consuming a product and you're like, is this good? Is this really what it says it is? There's no law against this. You are more than welcome to go send that to any lab. Go ahead and hit me up, figure out, hey, Marina, what are these labs? How do I send them there? I used to work at one. I'm happy to send you their information. You have the right to do that. Transparency is not optional. Okay, so if there is a company that is trying to bully you or make you feel some type of way because you are questioning the integrity of their product and you have potential proof that things are not what they say they are, don't let them gaslight you. If your numbers don't add up, if your formula cannot stand up to outside testing, like, you're not just shady, right? Like, you're committing fraud. Like, that's like legal. Like, some of these other things, like, it just makes you a jerk. Some of these things are straight up illegal. And this is definitely one of them. Fraud poisons the whole orchard, not just your tree. Now, that being said, let's kind of zoom out a little bit to a more industry level for these last three here. So wolf number 9, we're going to be talking about distributors and bottle shop owners who push exclusivity. So this isn't always like visible from the customer side of things. This is very much like a B2B, like business to business sale type of wolf. This is the kind of wolf that will come to a brand and says, hey, if you sign with us, you can't sell anywhere else in the region. They try to be the only ones. They try to say, hey, can we be the main people that everyone orders from? And that sounds like an opportunity, but it's actually a trap, because exclusivity doesn't protect small brands. It strangles small brands. You are literally putting your success in someone else's hands, and likely these distributors or bottle shops have multiple brands they're representing. So unless you are paying them a very specific pretty penny, or you have a very specific contract with them that says you are number one, you are going to be compared with a catalog of other options. So therefore, it's not fair to have exclusivity for anybody. I don't think it's smart for anything really, unless you are selling such a highly complex product that you need your sales teams to be like so beyond trained. Like, they need to be sommeliers and they need to have like extra herbalism training and I don't know, something else. Like, then okay, right? Like, then exclusivity makes sense, because how many people on planet Earth are going to like have a resume that fits those qualifications? But usually, like, if you're just selling some NA beer or like something else, like, come on, this is a scarcity tactic. It is another example of a non-compete clause, but just on that other kind of side. So instead of the non-compete on the employee, this is kind of the non-compete on the product itself. And that's just garbage for the same reasons. And, you know, again, that's one of those wolf behaviors that could be accidental, or you could be in a very specific situation where that makes sense. And that's okay. I'm not judging 100% of situations here. I get that the world is not black and white. But you have to ask yourself, if your business model relies on squeezing the market, is your business model that good? So that's going to lead us to our next point here, where I'm going to be talking about bigger distributors, bigger companies, right? We're going to talk about lobbyists and industry control. So, for example, big alcohol and cannabis are not clapping for us right now, right? Cannabis and hemp industries, technically two separate industries, even though they're very similar, they came up definitely later than alcohol, of course, but they came up prior to this non-alc boom. They're regulated so differently from so many other functional products. Therefore, they're paying lobbyists to write laws that make sure that non-alc stays in their shadow. In fact, in some states, they're trying to lobby it where you have to have an alcohol license to sell hemp drinks. What? In other states, it's just very prohibitive cost-wise to be able to sell cannabis in any form, cannabis or hemp. And all of that is thanks to lobbyists, because it definitely didn't used to be that way. They smile in your face. They talk about safety and fairness on, all in these political events. But behind the scenes, they're just protecting their monopoly. They want control, once again. and they want control on how and when and if our products get sold at all. This industry is young and vulnerable, and if we don't fight back, wolves will write the playbook before we've even taken the field. And this is going to bring me to one of my final wolves for this episode, but again, keep hanging out with us on Instagram for more. And this is another form of predatory behavior in the industry that, again, this is very B2B, but it's when mentors demand equity in a very specifically, like, power dynamically awkward way. So let's put it this way. These are the people who offer help, but only if you give them a piece of your company. I'm not talking a paycheck. Everybody you help, everyone that you hire, me included, we're not giving it for free. This is our livelihood, right? Pay people. But I'm talking about like extortion, where they're not going to help, like they're going to help, like you need to give them a piece of your business or else they will find a way to sabotage. And they are essentially trying to bully you out of what you got. Real mentors are going to offer different levels of support. They're going to have strategy sessions, coaching, tiered consulting, but wolves are going to dangle their expertise and try to own you. This is why we are so like specific about not owning a brick and mortar ourselves at this moment, because look, I get how it could look funny being a consultant that isn't actively in that space, but think about this. Think about how that instantly gives us a bias in whatever area we're in. Instantly. And I'm not saying that bias is always a bad thing, because our experience is always great to add on to. But what I'm trying to say is this. If I wanted to take over an entire region and I kept giving advice from a privileged place of experience and understanding, and I'm using that to take something of someone else's, even if they don't need my help long term. I mean, typically when people work with us, you don't need to work with us for years and years to like see results. I mean, we're always happy to stick around as long as you want, but I'm talking usually people come in, they have a goal, a breaking glass ceiling, but bada bing, bada boom. Like, you don't have to stick with us. You can as long as you want. But our whole thing is not controlling. Hang out, pay your fair share, make sure, that there's an equal exchange of energy. But beyond that, like, it's really, this is your baby. Double check that. Because once you give away equity, you never get it back unless you literally pay for it. And that ends up being a lot more expensive than just paying for consulting, coaching, mentorship in the first place. So protect your vision, protect your ownership, and just know that not every outstretched hand is there to lift you up. And side note, this is also what's crazy to me. Like, for owners, just know anytime you are getting consulting, coaching, mentorship from someone, all of that is a tax write-off. Like, all of that would not eat into your profits. So point of that story is not only would you long-term be saving your money by not giving your equity to someone else, but you'd also be saving in tax money, which allows you to then invest quicker and do a lot of other things. It's priceless. So don't give up your equity so quick. Unless this is like your side, secondary, third business, tertiary business, whatever, and you're just looking for someone else to operate, this is just kind of an investment piece, fine. Totally makes sense. But that's not usually the case for most of the people that we work with. So I always like to mention, like, protect your ownership and just double check. Like, if this is your primary business, typically giving up ownership in these scenarios doesn't make sense. But let's say you have an employee who sticks with you for years and you can't afford to give them a raise. You can absolutely, they've earned their equity. That's different, right? Because they've worked for it. They've put their blood, sweat, and tears and helped you make money. They're not holding it hostage. So there it is. The first 11 wolves I've named in the non-alcoholic industry, from late paychecks and expired stock, not inspired stock, to sloppy serving, exclusivity deals, fake functional brands, and predatory mentors. Wherefore, by their fruits ye shall know them. Another quote I love. And that's really the point. If the fruit is rotten, it doesn't matter how pretty the sheep's clothing looks. But good news, wolves don't get the last word. For every wolf, there are builders. There are leaders planting good trees that bear good fruit. And that's the future worth fighting for. And let me say this again, this is just the beginning. There are more wolves to call out, so follow along with the series on Instagram at Mocktails with Marina for the ongoing updates. Because the only way to protect this movement is to name the wolves out loud so they can't hide in sheep's clothing anymore. Thanks for tuning in to Mocktails with Marina. Until next time, keep planting good trees and don't let the wolves lead the flock. If you need anything, send me an email, hello@marinamars.com, and I got you.